We're going to find the mean square between time points. So this is like getting the mean square between groups that we found in the between subjects ANOVA. So instead of groups, we have time points. So the time points are the groups now. In this example, we have 3 time points and we have 4 subjects. So 4 people took this test or whatever it is 3 times. So you have 4 subjects and 3 time points. So you're going to have 12 total observations. So just keep that in mind. We're going to have 12 overall. And if you have equal number of people in each of the groups or each of the time points, which hopefully you do have unless someone dropped out, then you can find the grand mean more easily. And that's the first thing you need to do when finding the mean squared between. So the grand mean is the mean of all 12 observations in this case. So it's like adding all those 12 numbers up and dividing by 12. But an easier way to do that is if you have the sample means and you have the same amount of observations for each sample mean. So for this, we're going to have 4 observations per sample mean. Then if you have that, then you can just add each of them up. Yeah, add each of the sample means up and divide by the number of sample means. So we can have 4 plus 10.5 plus 14, and then divide that by 3. And we get a grand mean of 9.5. That's your first step, is to find the grand mean. Next, you want to find the deviations, just like you would when you're calculating like a standard deviation, right? We're going to be finding the sum of squares between the means. So I'm going to take 4 minus 9.5, which equals negative 5.5. Then I'm going to have 10.5 minus 9.5, which is 1. And lastly, you have 14 minus 9.5 equals 4.5. So we have 3 deviations here from the grand mean. Next, you want to square those deviations to find the squares. So negative 5.5 squared is 30.25. 1 squared is 1. 4.5 squared is 20.25. So that should be familiar how to do that, right? Now, you need to remember this last step. This step's important. So remember before I said there was 12 kind of observations. So what you're really doing is doing this for each of the observations. You're taking the sample mean that observation was used to calculate. So you have each time point and you have 4 observations, so they're kind of grouped by time point. So you would be taking the sample mean and minus the grand mean for each of those, but you need to do it for each observation. I know it sounds a little weird, but you're doing it for each observation when you calculate the mean squared within, when you had the between subjects ANOVA. So you need to kind of do it for each observation. So instead of doing it for each observation, instead we're going to multiply the squares by the number of subjects. So here we have 4 subjects, so 4 times 30.25 is 121. 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times 20.25 is 81. And then you want to add all those up. So we have 121 plus 4 plus 81 is 206. So that's the sum of squares between. And now we want to find the mean squared between. And that has this formula, the sum of squares between divided by its degrees of freedom. And it's degrees of freedom. Should be a little intuitive, right? We have 3 groups, so it's going to be the number of groups minus 1. It's going to be 206 divided by 2, and we get 103. So our mean square between is 103.